but you're close. Michael McDonald. I love Michael McDonald. I have no idea what he's saying, but I do love his music. Right? Linda, can you pull this down just a little bit? It's ringing, isn't it? Do I hear it ringing? Just bring it down just a little bit. I'll shout or speak it. There we go. How's that? You all hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. I want to introduce myself. First of all, I'm Pastor Ken Hudson. I'm the lead pastor here at this church, Carmel Mountain Church. We do have some things that are going on that I want to reinforce before I start my message today. I do want to reinforce the fact that after we're finished with the message today, we do have our prayer ministry workshop, which we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Really, really important. Does anyone remember what I said a few weeks ago? Prayer does what? Changes things. If you want, say that. Prayer changes things.
Prayer changes things.
Say it like you mean it. Prayer changes things. If you want things changed in your life, you really need to up your prayer life. Watch your prayer life will change your situation that's going on. So you hang around afterwards. We're going to have our prayer ministry workshop. I think you should be at least curious about what that's going to be all about. And of course, we'll try to get more people on the prayer ministry team because the more people who are praying and praying in general for the church, then prayer will change things. The other big event that we have going on that we certainly want all you ladies to sign up for is the women's workshop. It's actually one of the first times we've done that in a 2-day event. I know almost all of the speakers who are going to be here for that. We want, as our church, we want you women to support that yourselves because this is your church. So what the first thing is, you're not going to bother me at all, is ladies, take out your phone, open it up, go ahead. Take it out, open it up to those dates, and block it off. Because you know you're like me. If you don't put it in your phone, you don't write it down, you know what will happen. Something else will come and fill up your day, fill up your time. So on those 2 days, the 28th and 29th, am I right? See, I don't even get to go, and I know what the dates are. Write it down, the 28th and the 29th. Now, this also is a reaching out event, meaning we want the women to invite other women. Bring your friends, bring your neighbors, as Chevy said, and let's support that event. You'll be hearing more and more about that as the time approaches, and we're really looking forward to God blessing our women. In fact, I spoke on that last week, the last 2 weeks, right? Women in the church and women's roles in the church. Last week we had the panel discussion. We had a couple of, Lori was up here and a couple of ladies up here, and we talked about things and women and their role in the church. So if you didn't get to see that, you missed it, but it's not over. Go to the webpage, download it, and you can watch that discussion that I had last week. We're in a series called Summer Hits. Everybody say Summer Hits?
Summer Hits.
Summer Hits. So we're going to shift gears because last week we spoke about women, and mainly the summer series is talking about things that people in the church don't want to talk about. So we talked about science so far. We've talked about women and their roles in the church. Today, I'm going to start a little bit different thing than what we've been doing because I'm talking about world religions today. And I'm going to be talking because there's a lot of religions in the world, so I don't know what your view is on them. I said something earlier in the note that went out to everyone. I used the word dabble because that's usually what happens. You kind of get yourself involved in one religion and dabble in some other religions. So what I'm going to do today in world religions, I'm going to start that series off by talking. It's going to take me a few weeks because there's a lot of religions. So I'm going to set some foundation today. Then next week I'll be talking. I'm going to take the whole time and talk about Islam because it needs to be talked about. And after that, I'm going to get into Catholicism and some other things, so you don't really want to miss it. Let's pray. Heavenly Father God, I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable and pleasing to you, God, my strength and my redeemer. let the people be edified and you be glorified in the things that are said here today. In the name of Jesus. And the church says, amen. Our scripture for this is coming from Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 8. It says, I am the Lord, that is my name, my glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carve idols. I'll keep that same theme through the whole 2 or 3 weeks it's going to take me to get through some of the world religions. I think a good place for us to start is to figure out what are the top world religions in the world. So I'm going to give you the top 5 world religions. The World Atlas says, I'm going to give it to you in 2 ways. I'm going to tell you what the World Atlas says and what the Huffington Post says, because you can kind of see the difference between the two of them. The World Atlas says Christianity is the #1 or has more followers in it than any other religion in the world, with about 2.2 billion people who say that they are Christians. The Huffington Post says about the same figure. About 2.3 billion people say that they're Christians. But they say something very interesting, which I think is probably more correct. Because that figure that we're being given right there includes the Catholics. So they're saying that the Christians and the Catholics comprise 2.2 billion people. Well, the only reason why I'm stopping and pausing there for a second, because I've met too many people who were Catholic who told me I'm a Catholic, not a Christian. Anyone else had that happen? Yeah. So I'm not so sure. I think it's more accurate. If they're saying 50% are Catholic and then the other 50% are Christian, I probably would divide that out. Now, I get it that obviously the rest of the world sees us all as one, with Jesus being the focal point. 2, Islam is the second largest with 1.6 billion people who are Muslims. 80% of those are Sunni and 20% of them are Shia. So we have this tendency of lumping them both together, and it probably shouldn't. They both agree on that. The Huffington Post also says the same thing. The next religion is Hinduism, which has 1.5 billion followers. Now, the Huffington Post, I think, nails it a little bit better, because number 3 in the Huffington Post is the non-religious or the atheist group. The World Atlas doesn't include that group at all, but I think if there's 1.2 billion people who are doing something, we probably should include them, don't you think? And so we've got atheists, and then the next one for the World Atlas would be the Buddhists, and then Shintoism, and the Huffington Post agrees with that as well. So then as we take a look at these religions, here's my premise for what I'm saying. Christianity is different than all other religions because it is about having a relationship with God. Now, I only had a certain amount of space, so I didn't have room to write down the one true and living God, but you can add that in your notes if you want to. It's the only one. Well, what are we going to be taking a look at? Well, the first thing that I personally have a problem with some of the other religions. I'm not here to bash the other religions. I'm not here to talk about them and put them down or any of that. I'm just telling you that some of the tenets of what they have, I personally have a problem with it and couldn't follow it. Probably the #1 thing is what I call worshiping dead guys. All of them have some component. Either they're worshiping a dead guy, or a dead guy started it and are continuing it on, and there's some elements of what the dead guy said. See, in Christianity, we don't do that. We serve a living Savior, which I'm going to talk about when I get to who is Christ and who is Christ really. That is the tenet of what it is that we believe. If you don't believe and you're a Christian that Jesus died and rose from the dead, that is the staple, the foundation of our belief. So we don't worship a dead God. All the other religions are going to have either a dead God or something that they believe. which then eliminates me. Number one in your notes. Even with religion, adding some truth always makes for a good lie. So if you want to tell a lie, you got to have a little bit of truth in there. Otherwise, you won't be believable. And so that's, again, why I'm saying that I understand that all the religions that I'm probably going to talk about do have some hints of truth in them. They have some merit in some of their tenets that they're talking about in their religions. I would have to agree with that. But ultimately, I know that the devil has several names. One of them is deceiver. He is the accuser. And one of his big names is he is the father of lies. You see, if we think about the devil and we think about the things that he does, if he were overt, he wouldn't be effective, would he? Here, let me give you an analogy. If you heard a knock on your door, you went to the door and you looked through the hole, the security hole, and the devil was standing there. He was red. He has horns. He's got that mustache similar to mine. Right? His tail is flopping around. Whatever. You know you wouldn't open the door. Because he's too obvious. No, the devil probably is wearing a muscle shirt. He's probably in a mini skirt of some sort. Or something that the disguise is there where you don't see it. So we take the chain and we put it on the door and just open the door oh so much so we can see, and the devil gets his foot in, and that's all he needs. Because then if he gets his foot in, before you know it, he's taken over your whole house. So the Bible tells us, do not give place to the devil. That means don't even open the door so he can get his foot in there. Because actually, you know, that little chain, security chain thing, doesn't really help all that much. You know, a good solid foot on the door and, you know, the two screws that are holding that in, and it's over. Right? The second thing I want to make sure that we get is a cult. And I am not saying that the religions I'm going to talk about are cults. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the information and you decide for yourself. That's all I can do, is just give you the information. Now, one of the tenets, one of the things that we can look at is if it's a cult, is do they have, or does the religion, or does the group, whatever, have some secret information that you can only get from them? And I'm going to leave it at that. Ask yourself, when I'm talking about it, does a group, does the religion, does whoever's trying to get you to do something have some sort of secret information that you can only get from them? Because that, by definition then, could fit into the category of being a cult. You see, because in Christianity, we don't have that. My Bible tells me that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that he rose from the grave, you shall be saved. That's it. I gave it to you. No secret about it. It says that right there in Romans 10 and 9. That's what it says. When can that happen? That can happen today. You could be laying on your deathbed, but sin your whole life, be a hellion your whole life, and if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart what I just said, you will be saved. You may get to heaven with smoke on you, but at least you'll get there. That's heaven by smoke. So I'm going to give you 4 things to look at as we're looking at some of these religions. Number one is most religions will answer the question, where do we come from? Second thing they'll do, how are we supposed to live? That's a big one, right? They'll tell you what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to live. And where are we going when we die? And the fourth thing is, how do we get to wherever it is that we're going? Most religions will tell you that. Okay? And number four, of course, is connected to number two. How you live usually has something to do with where you're going. I believe we have that in Christianity too, correct? How you live has something to do with where you're going. So let's take a look at Buddhism, because it is one of the bigger ones. I'm going to take a look at that one. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about that. Even though Buddhism is not all that big here, where is it big? It's big in India and in the eastern countries, right? But there is a presence here. And again, what my point with it is going to be with this and Hinduism is we dabble in it. And I'm going to show you, hopefully, some of the potential problems of dabbling in other people's religion. First of all, it came about by a guy named Siddhartha Gautama, right? And he became known as the Buddha, which means an enlightened one. Anyone been in the East, the Near East, Japan or Thailand or any of that? Because the Buddha is up all over the place, right? Not so much in Japan, because they're dealing with the dragon, really, is the main thing. You know, not Bruce Lee entered the dragon, but there is some basis for that. In fact, the Buddha is all over. We went to Thailand. It's probably the place where I saw it the most. Just great big old humongous statues of the Buddha. And as I said, in Japan, we lived there for 9 years, as most of you know. Mainly it's the dragon. In fact, most places, apartments, houses, stuff that you rent, will have two dragons that are sitting right out at the entrance. Now me, I actually wanted to kick the dragons over and just tell the landlord, you can take those, because the God that I serve has nothing to do with that. But I wanted to not be ugly American. Right? I was English. So, you know, I'm like, praying over the thing. You have no power in the name of Jesus. Some of the terms that go along with Buddha and Buddhism, let me see if you've heard any of these. Shanghai, Sutra, Buddha, Dharma, Nirvana, Karma. You've heard of some of that stuff, I'll bet. You see, there's some problems for me with Buddhism. One of them is Buddha lived about 500 BC, somewhere around there in that time period. He died, and when he died, they didn't write anything down. His disciples, his followers, whatever, took off and began to spread what Buddha said orally. That happened for about 400 years before they started writing things down. Now there is a bit of problem with oral whatever. I want you to think just for a second back when you were in elementary school and you used to play telephone, right? Telephone is, I whisper something to Linda there, and she's going to whisper it right to you, and you're going to whisper it to Jared, and right on around the room, right, Alicia? And then you know it's jacked up by the time it gets to Jared, right? It's already messed up. So by the time, I just know he's a joker, right? And there's always someone in there who purposely messes it up. All right. Her. And so it goes around the room, and by the time it gets all the way over there, it's nothing like what I said. That's the point that I'm trying to make with you with Buddhism. It's 400 years before anybody even writes anything down. Then it's another 1,500 years before the canon is written. And the canon is a set of rules and laws and whatever that goes with it. Well, that's a little bit problematic for me, personally, because of the reliability of what is being written and what has been said. Did you know that Buddha didn't actually consider himself a god? They elevated him to that status after he died. Is actually what happened. They elevated him, his disciples, his people, at some point elevated him to the point of being divine, even though that really wasn't his original thoughts. At least that's what we think. There's something that we call manuscript evidence. Everybody say manuscript evidence.
Manuscript evidence.
Listen, Christians, you guys got to know what you're talking about. We talked about that when we had Carla and Tom up here, and we talked about science and stuff. We as Christians, we got to know what we're standing on, and that what we're standing on is the truth. And what we're standing on is called manuscript evidence. There is more manuscript evidence to prove the validity of the Bible than all ancient documents combined. Ancient documents is considered any document that is written before the invention of the printing press, which happened in around 1440. Gutenberg. Yeah, it was Gutenberg printing around the 1440. So then before that, things are written just like you're thinking. They're written on scrolls, papyrus. There is more manuscript evidence of that sort to prove the Bible is true than all the ancient documents combined. Let me give you some figures. This comes from the Creation Museum, which happens to be here in Santee. Anyone ever been there? You all, we need to make a trip, pull a bus out here or something, and we need to go to Santee, to the Creation Museum. It is fantastic. You should go. It's right next to the drive-in. You know where the Santee drive-in is? How about the Santee swap meet, some of them? That place. It's right there. Fantastic. The Creation Museum says the textual evidence is greater for both the Old and New Testament than any other historically reliable ancient document. There is more evidence for the Bible's authenticity than for any literature or of antiquity. Here's the numbers. The New Testament was written in the 1st century A.D., right? So Paul, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, right? All of that stuff is being written after Jesus has risen from the dead and he's gone on back to heaven, and they're writing down. Now, if you really actually study the Bible, there are some things called Markian theory and some other stuff where there are some thoughts that they didn't try to remember everything that you see in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They don't try to remember all that. They say somebody was recording it, like a secretary. But you all, we'll talk about that on Wednesday. That's a little bit deeper. So, in the first 100 years of Jesus' death, everything gets written down. That's basically what that says. The New Testament was written in the 1st century. There are some 20,000 manuscripts in existence right now of that. The earliest textual evidence was copied within the first 100 years of the original document. That's huge. The number of documents, 20,000 or more, is big, and the fact that it was written so closely after the events, meaning the writers of the Bible had a chance to, in the New Testament, were talking to the eyewitnesses and writing down what they said. They were talking to Peter, James, and John, and they were writing down what they said. They went to the witnesses who saw Jesus for 40 days after they crucified him and wrote down what they said. Manuscript evidence. Let me give you a comparison so you should have a frame of reference in our mind. Anyone ever heard of Caesar and the Gallic Wars? Pretty popular stuff. They probably taught it to you in U.S. history. World history. Caesar and the Gallic Wars was written in the 1st century B.C. There are only 10 manuscripts of that writing in existence. And the earliest writing of that, someone wrote it down, was 1,000 years after it happened. No one here is questioning that. Why aren't we questioning that? The validity of that evidence when it was written 1,000 years after the events and stuff had happened. There's only 10 pieces of whatever they wrote it. We don't question that. It just gets put right in the history books. Anyone ever heard of Aristotle? Of course you have. Aristotle's Poetics was written in the 4th century BC. There are only 5 manuscripts in existence of those writings, and the earliest evidence we have of the copies of that was 1,400 years later. And no one questions Aristotle and his writings. Probably in your English class they made you read some of the poems and do all of that, right? We don't question that. And there's only 5 manuscripts written 1,400 years later. You all getting a picture of how the Bible is valid in what it is and what it's saying. Let's take a turn. Nirvana. I have to tell you the truth. The first day I started studying and working for this, I actually was starting to get a headache a little bit. Because I understand that no matter what the religion is, I'm not going to do it 100% justice up here. If you want to know completely about a religion, then go enroll at San Diego State or something and take it for a year. You're probably going to have to get a doctorate in it to really understand. But it's just not possible. So I'm going to give you some of the tenets of some of these religions with some of the words that I think you probably have heard and tell you what it means. I went to a website called GodQuestions.org. If you're a Bible student, you study the Bible at all, I would write that down on the paper because they can save you a lot of work. It's called GotQuestions.org. And they have articles in there of people who you type in the subject, they tell you about it in everyday language without a lot of the big verbiage. This is what they say about nirvana. The final goal of Buddhism is nirvana, when quenching of all desire is complete and the person is transformed into another state. Nirvana is a complex conceptual state of being in which a person escapes the sufferings of the world and realizes his or her oneness with the universe. The person whose conscious enters nirvana can eventually leave behind the cycle of reincarnation to exist spiritually. I could try to translate that for you, but like I said, it's pretty complex. But I know the reincarnation and then so you're being reincarnated over and over and over again until you reach this spiritual state. I have to be honest with you again. I'm not really all that crazy about coming back here to Earth again, you know. I really am not. I mean, there's some great things here. I love my wife over there, and we got kids. But I'm not trying, especially if I got to come back in some other, I don't even know what. Right? Just come back and let me just do it all over again. Just doesn't really sound all that appealing to me, too. Buddhists do not believe in God as Christians would define and use that word. They don't. Buddhism is not compatible with the belief in a personal God that is distinct from his creation, his sovereign will, and the plan for mankind whose grace can deliver one from guilt and suffering. One cannot be meaningfully and consistently Buddhist and believe in anything like a theist God. That came from GodQuestions.org as well. The Bible tells us in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 4 through 6, there is one body and one spirit, just as you were called to the hope that belongs to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Do you all hear a little bit of that, what I just said right there in my definition of the nirvana? Did you hear a little bit of that? That's what I meant earlier. You see, in Buddhism, you kind of have to make your own way. The Bible tells us there is nothing you're going to do on your own accord to get into heaven. No. That's not the way it works. The Bible tells us that for by grace you are saved through faith, not works. It is a gift of God, least any of us would start boasting about it. Right? Ephesians 2, chapter 8 and 9. For by grace, it is by the grace of God that we're saved. So no amount of meditating, no amount of fasting, no amount of any of self-denial, enlightenment is going to make us right before our God. Not going to happen. Hinduism. I'm turning the corner of the back stretch now. Hinduism is one of the oldest religions in the world, about 14 or 1500 BC. Very, very complex with millions of gods. So we already in Christianity are going to have a problem with that because of what I just said. Let me give you a few terms associated with Hinduism. Is anyone else out there like me and you think of Hinduism and Buddhism and it's just like this? I can't. It's really hard, even when I'm reading this, because a lot of the terms are the same. And maybe it's just because I don't think of it that often. But listen, avatars, the Brahma, the caste system, gurus, karma, Krishna, nirvana, reincarnation, and yoga are some names that would come out of that. That sound familiar to anyone? Let me give you a synopsis really fast of what Hinduism is, and then I'm going to finish up. Hinduism views mankind as divine because Brahma is in everything. Hinduism then asserts that everyone is divine. Atman, or self, is one with Brahma. The spiritual goal of a Hindu is to become one with Brahma, thus ceasing to exist in its illusionary form of individual self. So you're trying to rid yourself. How a person is reincarnated is determined by the karma, which is the principle of cause and effect governed by the nature's balance. Anyone ever heard anyone say, "Woo, that was some bad karma"? You don't confess it. You're going to say it yourself. So people say, "Ooh, that was bad karma." I heard someone say one time, he called it bad juju. Anyone ever heard that? Bad juju. You know, bad juju, bad karma, I think is all talking about the same thing. It's when somebody does something, right? And I think what that's saying is they're doing something and there's something in the atmosphere that eventually is going to get you because you weren't doing the right thing. Right? So that was some bad karma. I can't get you, but the karma's going to get you. Sooner or later, or the juju's going to get you. Let me take one of those terms associated with these religions and show you how we dabble in it and the potential problem with that. And the word is yoga. Somebody say, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Thank you. Somebody needs to say, uh-oh. Because we dabble a lot in yoga. So let me tell you a couple things about that. First of all, let me give you my personal disclaimer. My personal disclaimer is this. I know I have been told long before I became pastor of this church. Actually, someone told me it when we were living in Okinawa about 7 or 8 years ago. They said, "Pastor, you're too serious." And I know what it was about. It was about Halloween, because I don't celebrate Halloween, don't have anything to do with it, don't want to eat candy, I don't pass out candy, I'm that person when the light is off, don't knock on the door, there's no Easter bunny, so no Easter egg hunts, none of that. I'm that guy, I'm over there, Santa Claus, don't start with me, and Christmas and all of that. I'm him, so I've been told right off the bat that I'm too serious. So what I'm about to say to you about yoga, some of you may perceive I am too serious, but I already know that. Okay? Doesn't mean I'm wrong, though. Just means I'm serious about it. So I went to the yoga webpage, and I wanted to pull out some information. Because I know that yoga has a meditation component. And I think I understand part of that, why there's a meditation component. And within the meditation component of yoga, to me, is a problem. Let me give you a couple of examples why. is because I think anything that we're doing where we are purposely meditating and emptying ourselves and emptying our mind and trying to just reach some sort of state of emptiness can potentially be a problem, because then you are vulnerable. Let me give you a couple of examples. It's like being hypnotized. I would never let anybody hypnotize me. Because what do they tell you? Close your eyes, empty your mind, blah, 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 blah. And then they want to take control of it and make you look stupid, right? And they get you to do stuff that you wouldn't do, right? And people do it. It's not fake. They do it, right? Because they empty their mind and they allow something or someone else or whatever the case may be. I'm even going to break it down even more simple than that. You all remember when you were kids and you had to go to bed and your parents said, now go to bed and say your prayers, and you got down there on your knees. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to say, God bless mommy and daddy, my sister, but not my brother because he hit me today. Now, what is the concept behind that? Because we all know that when you sleep, you're supposed to empty your mind somewhat of all the stuff that you did that day, the stuff you're going to do, whatever, and you empty your mind, and therefore you become somewhat in a vulnerable state. Are you guys following with me? So then, let's talk about yoga then and meditation, which they clearly are trying to get you to empty your mind. I went to the webpage, this is what I found. I'm quoting. What is meditation? Get expert insight here on meditation and its symbiotic relationship to yoga. Symbiotic as one. Meditation is part of it. Methodology exists within the yoga tradition that is designed to reveal the interconnectedness of every living thing. This fundamental unity is referred to as advaita. Advaita. Meditation is the actual experience of this union. That's from their webpage. Now, let me put that in my own words. Right? You're supposed to empty out yourself to become a oneness with everything around you and the oneness of whatever. I think that could be a problem. Here's why. Are you guys with me? All right, I got a story for you. It's about Jesus. Jesus gets off a boat. He's getting ready to walk across. There's a demon-possessed man. The demon-possessed man sees Jesus. He runs over to the man, and he says, the man runs over to Jesus and says, oh my gosh. This is me paraphrasing, of course. Oh my gosh, Jesus, what are you doing here now? You're not supposed to be here. Jesus said, be quiet. What's your name? He said, my name is Legion because there's many of us in here. So in other words, the body that this devil was possessing had more than one spirit on him. Are you guys with me? The devil then says, Jesus, what are you doing now? It's not our time. It's not our time for what? Well, Jesus knew exactly what he was talking about. It's not their time to be sent into the abyss forever, to live in the abyss, eternally burning up. And the devil wanted to know what Jesus was doing there at that time. He says to him, all right, so that's you, Jesus, and I know you can send me into the abyss, which is going to happen eventually, but for now, Jesus, don't do that. How about you send us into those pigs over there? Right? Jesus said, all right. So he cast the demons out. The demons went and jumped in the pigs, right? You all know the story. They jumped in the pigs, and the pigs jumped off the cliff and killed themselves. Right? Okay, here we go. Here's your connection. The pigs jumped off and killed themselves, but the devils didn't. The devils, in this case, in Legion, are still here. That's what I'm telling you. They're still here. All right. So I told you yoga and some of that meditating stuff has been around a couple thousand years. Easy. People have been meditating on what? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows in 2,000 years of history what people who have been doing yoga have been meditating on. And you're going to attach yourself through meditation to that? You're going to sit. You don't know what they were meditating on and what they were calling on. And you're going to empty yourself out in some sort of state using those words and all those other things to empty yourself out and invite in what? It's another way of thinking about it. I'd be real cautious about that if I were you, because the Bible tells us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against powers and principalities in high places. That's what it says. So what does that mean? That there's stuff that's going on in the atmosphere, there's evil forces, there's stuff that's going on that's looking for an opportunity to attack you. And I believe when you empty yourself out, you make yourself vulnerable for whatever happens to be out there, let alone attaching yourself purposely to whoever has been praying for the last 2,000 years. And you say the same words. Are you all with me? I would watch that if I were you. The Bible tells us in Psalm 1 that we're supposed to meditate on the Word of God both day and night. And if you do that, you'll be like a tree planted by rivers of living water. That's what it says. Meditate on the Word of God. That's what we should be meditating on and not making ourselves vulnerable purposely for other stuff. So if you want to do upward dog, downward dog, sideward. Maybe I'm a hater because I can't sit down with my legs crossed. I never could do it. Now, even when I was a kid, I couldn't do it before I got so tall. I'm envious, though. I wish I could stretch like that, but I don't have it going on like that. Let me go ahead and just pray for us because I'm really finished with that.